Hi and welcome to another episode of Top Volts, and today we're going to be looking at this XR3i. This is the Supa Snaps XR3i, first released in 1988 on their 29th edition catalogue. So this was part of a set that was released in 1988, and it was part of the C850, but you could buy these individually as well. But they all there was quite a few different variants of the XR3i. This one's the Supa Snaps, which has its own reference as well as all of the other XR3is, although they don't say them on the bottom of the chassis, but you can pretty much tell by the livery that's on the car itself. So this one's missing the wing mirrors and the little fairing off the back there, which at some point I will try and find those. This also feels quite stiff. I've never actually opened this one up before, but it does run, but it runs quite rough, and even I think possibly the pinion's gone. But looking on the underside, the rear sort of drive shaft, you could say, is quite rusty, and so is the front axle. That's quite rusty. So I think possibly a bit of humidity's got to this, but we'll have a little look inside. I could do with a new guide as well. This one seems to have had quite a bashing really, so we'll change that. But we'll open this up, have a little look inside, and see what's going on with this rear pinion and gear. Possibly swap that out maybe. And then just make sure there's nothing else sort of funky going on inside there. This is the one with the lights, so there is lights inside there, but we'll have a little look at those to make sure they're all still intact. So first up, we'll open this up. So I tend to like to use a bit of plastic. This is just the other end of a scalpel, and where the number plate would be, you just want to lightly press on there, and because on this it's held in by the back and the front, so behind the bumper here there's another area where it pops through. So if I just press on that, and you just want to pull the wheels just to one side, as you can see that just comes unclipped, and there's the front clip as I previously mentioned, which goes just on the inside, just in there. So that sits in there. So when you put it back together, that's the way around that you want to do it. Inside there, that doesn't look too bad actually. Maybe just a little wipe out with a soft brush. So looking inside the chassis here, so yeah, so the motor's got a little bit of corrosion on there. So that might benefit from a little bit of oil added to the back here. So that's looks to be a little bit corroded in there as well. So we give this a brush. There's a little bit of dust inside the body shell, inside the chassis there, but that's actually not too bad. Lights are intact. Yeah, that looks all good. What have we got there? Yeah, that's all good. Backlights are intact as well. So you can see I'm just sat inside these slots. So that actually looks quite good. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at this rear pinion and the gear, and possibly swap out these axles as well. Okay, so what I've done, I've found some old axles which are in better condition. This one's got a good gear already on there, so we don't have to change this around, and another front axle which is equally in good condition. Some new rear bearings for the back, a new pinion, and a new guide with some brushes on there, new brushes. So let's have a little closer look at the car itself. So if we look at the rear pinion, okay, so there's a split just in between the tooth there. You could probably just about see that. So that will put the pinion and the rear gear out of mesh, which is what's happening here. That's it's just not running very true at all. So we'll swap all this out. We'll give the motor a drink of oil as well and give it a good brush out. And we'll just swap this pinion out on this motor. So first things first, we'll remove the lights very carefully from the back. So I tend to like just to get just underneath the bulb and just slowly ease those out. And this will enable us to remove the motor. So the motor is held in from the front and 2 clips either side. So to remove this, just lightly press either side of the motor and then press on the underside of the motor there. Just give it a little push. And that should just pop out. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we just make sure that's sitting where we want it to sit. There you go, just pull those pins out. Just release that. So we'll put these lights back in just a moment. All right, so looking at this pinion, can we just pull that off? No. So at some point somebody's put a bit of super glue around that. So we'll just use the pinion tool just to release. So we just wind that back. Just place that in there. And that should just break the seal. Okay, perfect. We'll put that to one side. Yeah, as you can see, there's a split. So we'll place our new pinion onto the motor. So we just give that a gentle push just to get a bite onto the front. Then we use the pinion tool just to guide that pinion back on and to the depth that we need. Okay, that looks quite good. Let's see how that sits. Okay, we can pull that back out a little bit. It's probably gone in just a tad too far. Just want to go maybe a couple of mil. Okay, let's try that. Gone a bit too far now. Just wind that back a bit. Okay, perfect. I think that's the winner. Okay, so we'll put that to one side. So we'll swap the back wheels out. So just gently pull those out. Remove those wheels. You can see that's pretty gunky. So we'll get rid of that. Take this wheel off. There's like a build-up of hair and everything around this one. And also I think that might be a little bit buckled, but we'll put that to one side. So we'll get our new rear gear, new pinion, sorry, new rear gear and bearing. Place them back in. Just give that a gentle push, always supporting the chassis. Okay, just place those wheels back on. we do the same with the front. You can see how rusty that is. So we just remove those wheels, which may benefit from a little bit of glue in there at some point. Place them back. Great, but before we do that, I'm just going to give that a little brush out. Just where that axle sat. And the trusty shaving brush. We do the same with the body shell, just to remove anything that might be loose in there. Okay, perfect. So we can now click this motor back into place. What I tend to like to do is, actually, before I do that, let's put some oil in there. Just place the oil around back here. Just let that travel down. And a tiny bit just around here, just under the pinion. Okay, so we'll put the motor back in. We'll just get that back in first. Perfect. And that sits in quite snug, and that is working really nice. That's perfect. Okay, so we put the front axle back on. Just carefully lift those wires and place that back into there. It feels quite stiff, so maybe do one side at a time. Okay, perfect. Okay, that fits in there very snug. That's brilliant. Okay, so that's looking much nicer. So what we'll do is we'll put the lights back in the back here. So what we've got, you feed the wire just inside of this brass button on both sides. And then we'll place those back into their slots. That one as well. Let's get you back into there. Okay, that's perfect. We can test to make sure all the lights are working on this when we run it up. But overall, that looks much nicer. So we'll now change out the front guide. So on this, a little bit fiddly with all the extra wires you got for the lighting in there, but you've got a push together pin. So on the back of the guide, you have a split pin. So what you need to do is just compress that. And then that will just push through. Okay. Actually, that didn't pull all the way through. Perfect. And you have your two pins that are literally pressed just into the braids on the above. You see there's 2 holes, and you literally just push those push pins straight into place. And there's the new one. There's the 2 holes. Okay, so I finally got those pins in. In the end I had to use a pair of pliers because the diameter of the hole was slightly smaller than the other guide, so they took a little bit more persuaded and get in. All I ended up doing in the end is just giving it a gentle pinch, and that solved the issue. So a little bit of a pain, but we got it done. Okay, perfect. So that's sitting very nice. We'll just make sure those wires are sitting in their guide, in their slot. Perfect. So we can now put the body shell back on. So with this, you want to put the front in first. Just guide that in. And then with the back, just give that a gentle press. And that should slide into place. Okay, perfect. So that's all back on. Those wheels are moving free. And that feels great. It's very, very loose. Okay, so we'll run this little car up, make sure that is working as it should, and that we've got all 4 lights working, just in case there's a replacement bulb needed or something like that. But we'll give this a run up and just make sure that everything is actually working as it should. Okay, so we'll give this car a run up. We'll start the volts low and just increase. We can also check to see if the lights are working and whatnot. So we'll just switch the power on here. I'm just going to lift the rear wheel slightly. Okay, that came on very easy. I'm just going to increase the volts. Okay, I can see we've got rear lights, but no front lights. But overall, the motor is running very free, so that's successful. Perfect. Okay, well, that's great. That's running really, really nice. Had another look inside, and the 2 front bulbs are blown, so we'll get some new bulbs for that and replace it. But the back ones are working well, and also need to find the mirrors and the rear fairing, but in the blue, to go with this. Sometimes that can be a bit of a challenge to get specific colours. But overall, I'm very pleased with the way it's running, and swapping out those axles really did help. Well, thank you very, very much for watching my video. If you have any comments or advice on this car that you would like to share, please leave it in the comment section, and I'll try my very best to get back to you. Well, thank you very, very much, and I'll see you at the next one.